The style is very free flowing, I would say. It feels very natural. There's plenty of opportunity to have conversations that might sprout off in one direction or might be relevant to our particular organisation that maybe wouldn't happen in other trainings that Pearlcatchers delivered. So it's quite agile, and that's what we really like about it. The fact that we're able to kind of like pause the training, have a conversation, especially when we're talking about something about diversity and equality. People might be talking about their own personal experiences. So it's great that we're able to make it quite, it's not regimented, it's not off the shelf. We can go in different directions, and I think that's what people really get value from in training. I find, especially over the last year, training has become very, very hard. People are on Zoom calls, Teams calls all the time, and it's really hard to keep people engaged. And what I find Pearlcatchers do really well is they will always provide some content that people can have a look at either during the session or beforehand. We'll have the trainer talking to people, so it's face to camera. There'll also be some slides. They utilize breakout rooms and discussion groups really well, so it's not just death by PowerPoint, as I call it. There's a really nice style of mixing those things up so that you don't feel like you've been sat in front of a computer watching PowerPoint for 3 hours. It's a really nice combination, and it's a really nice style of delivery. And it's also a very interactive style, so you're not being talked at for 3 hours. There's lots of opportunity for conversation. I've been on trainings where I don't feel like I'm allowed to kind of put my hand up and say something, but with Pearlcatchers training, I absolutely feel like, and we've had a lot of feedback that people feel like they can really join in a discussion, and it is that interactive style. A lot of the feedback that we get great feedback on Pearlcatchers training, and a lot of the feedback is relating to how participants are able to put things into practice right away. So sometimes you'll go on a training and you'll learn loads of theory, but so what? You know, it's about how you can then go back, and if you're a team manager, for example, how you can apply the coaching techniques that you've just learned in that training session, or how you can go and have a conversation about diversity and inclusion, and you can put it into practice straight away. And that's where the value is really added. You can learn theory from a textbook. That's not going to help you in your role. You need to then be able to implement it in your role. Yeah. And I think that by far is the most valuable piece of feedback that we get, and we get it often. So Pearlcatchers work really well with us when we are looking to either design a new course or deliver a new course that Pearlcatchers might deliver elsewhere, but we might tweak it for Merton. And we work really well together to understand, first of all, what's the need? Why are we delivering this training? And then secondly, what needs to change? So an example of this is Sharon and the team at Pearlcatchers had been delivering some coaching training for us recently for our senior leadership. So it was really focusing on talent and the talent of the future, high potentials, focusing on coaching. And we have now decided to widen that to all line managers. So what we needed to do was think about, right, your first step up into management. Those managers might not necessarily be purely focused on talent of the future, but we need to still focus on coaching. So we've worked together to pull out the real sort of like talent management focus. It's still important, it still touches on it, but it's more on those kind of like core coaching skills that they may not already have. So we've worked together to make sure the need of our business fits in with what Sharon and the team are delivering. With the diversity and inclusion workshops, I have found that as a participant myself, it's quite a refreshing approach to the sort of telling people that they are biased, or they have these biases towards certain groups. And it's more about giving people the space to reflect on things that maybe they didn't even realize, or things that they might have witnessed before that they didn't think anything of at the time. But actually, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, then you might start to see things differently. So there's absolutely no sort of blame culture and making people feel bad. It's all about educating and growing. I also found that the course that I went on gave people the space to share some stories, and I found that Pearlcatchers did a really good job of making the space feel safe, that I could say that. I'll actually give an example. My example that I gave was that I was on a call with a colleague of mine who wore a headscarf, but she wasn't wearing it at the time. It was just myself and my colleague, who were both females, and I needed to check something with one of our male colleagues, and so I dialed him into the call, and she was like, oh no, hold on a second, and she had to turn her camera off, and I didn't realize what was happening at the time. And then afterwards, of course, I realized that that's what it was, and I spoke to her about it, and it was fine. She wasn't offended or upset, but I did talk her through, and I really did apologize. And the Pearlcatchers training gave me that opportunity to tell that story, but I felt really safe in telling it, and I felt like I wasn't going to be judged, and I felt really supported by my colleagues and by the trainer as well. And I feel that that's a really refreshing thing to be able to do, because I think we do have a culture, especially in the UK, that we might kind of like sit there tight-lipped and not share these experiences or share these stories, whereas actually the whole point of this training and this whole kind of push at the moment for this type of training is that we need to be having these conversations, and it is okay to have these conversations whilst working within some boundaries that of course everyone is aware of. We always collect feedback after our training, and the feedback that we have had following this training is that, again, managers feel that they have something, and employees, that they have something that they can then put into practice. So it's not a huge shift overnight, you know, from a 3-hour training course, but it definitely is the right steps in the right direction. So it's people thinking about the experiences of others, thinking about their team, their colleagues, other people at Merton Council, and what experiences they may have had, and just kind of opening up a little bit of not just their own experience and what they're doing from day to day. So I think it makes them think more widely. And I've been quite fortunate. I'm working at the moment with our Race Equality Network and having conversations and kind of encouraging the members of that group to attend the training as well. And they've said it's really beneficial. And some of them had even said to me that they didn't really feel it was for them, because they didn't feel that they needed to attend the diversity and inclusion training. However, they've come back and said absolutely it is for everyone, and it really has helped them to think about other people's perspectives as well. So it's a really great thing, and it's something that we're working on at the moment about perspective. So it's helping to get people to think differently.
Considering Pearlcatchers were selected through a competitive tender process, through the council's procurement process, I believe that the biggest impact is to do with how practical the training is, and how impactful the training is in terms of messages, key messages that can be recalled easily and can be fed into the culture of the workplace. So I think in terms of impact, it's all about simple messages, simple learning that can be recounted easily and quickly. The employees' approach has become more confident in terms of proactively working to resolve customer situations rather than reactively. Also about self-awareness, actually making sure that they're aware of the impact upon that they have themselves on the scenario and on the situation that they're in. And also much more proactive, so proactive in terms of reporting, making sure that difficult experiences that they have worked with, they have actually reported it, so therefore we've got much more management information to use to accommodate changes and other things that are happening within the service. The Pearlcatchers experience from start to finish is a personal experience, and I mean personal not in the me personal, but in the personal service in terms of the council. There is the willingness and the time taken to understand and not just assume that Surrey County Council is the same as another county council, it's the same as another library service. We are unique and are all different, and from that point of view it is a personal and it has a personal aspect to it. There's also a humble and a humourful side to it as well, and I don't know if humourful is a word, but actually that's the only way I can describe it. We can have a laugh together, and in the serious life of councils and industry and private industry, to have a laugh with somebody you're working with is the way you can create great things. We have back in terms of our investment, the anecdotal comments in terms of customers who challenge us from staff who may have been a bit resistant, may not enjoy learning, may not enjoy being part of training. I've said it's some of the best training that they have ever experienced, and that is proof of the pudding. We've also got a fairly cynical service at times, but that cynical service is offset by a service that's been so willing. So we have seen cultural change come as part of this project. Organisations that are looking at Pearlcatchers, I would suggest that what you see is authentic. Okay, there are many organisations out there that do not say what they're going to do on the tin. And my experience of Pearlcatchers is that what they offer to you is what they deliver, and if you require it to become unique to you, then make that investment and make it unique to you.
It was necessary to launch the altogether different programme, because if you look at where we'd come from in policing, we're very traditional, or seen as a very traditional service. If we kept doing what we'd always done, we were going to get what we always got. And with austerity measures and being cut 20 to 25%, all we were going to be doing was asking a very much smaller number of people to do the same work, and it was just not possible. We had to do something different. When we looked at the austerity measures, when the Chancellor first announced the cuts of 20%, we'd actually modelled for 15. We were one of the sort of forces who thought it might have been about 15%. So 20% did take us by surprise, but we already knew pretty much what we wanted to achieve. And we wanted to change the paradigm of the organisation. We wanted to change the culture. We wanted to change from a very traditional, safe, public sector, you're here, jobs for life, you're here because of your career, to a much more flexible, dynamic, smaller, fleet of foot organisation that could reflect what the organisation wanted, but could be entrepreneurial in the way that they grabbed other organisation to work with us to create safe communities. So when you look at it, if we did the redundancy programme early, so we accumulated capital, and we felt that £100,000 capital to show to our supervisors who were left that we were investing in them. We knew that their job was going to be harder and different. We were going to invest £100,000 into their development. And we actually chose £100,000 because it was a round figure, and we could actually tell our staff that's exactly what we were doing, investing in them. Altogether Different's only been running 11 months, and even in that short space of time, the difference in the organisation is tangible. And you only have to ask the participants. Here we are, at time of mid-austerity, we've released lots of people from the organisation, and we are facing more challenging times. Crime's down, antisocial behaviour's down, satisfaction is up significantly, customer satisfaction, confidence of communities is going up, the number of people we arrest is going up, our conviction rate, that's to say the quality of the files and whether or not we secure convictions at court, is going up. We're being really creative and innovative in the way that we look at young people, rather than labelling them as criminal, but working with them in really imaginative ways so that they don't see themselves as criminal, and their recidivism rates, the rate of reconviction, is fantastically reduced. It's off the scale. So how's that all achieved? Well, that's all achieved because a critical mass of the people who were involved in this development opportunity have sat down with somebody, and it was the one-to-ones that were really, really key to this. So it was the 360-degree feedback. For the first time, some people in leadership roles had got honest, anonymous feedback about the impact they were having on the people they led. So that was hugely therapeutic, but it was only therapeutic because we sat it with a coaching session, a one-to-one session of somebody who was completely objective and independent to interpret what they were hearing. Because I think sometimes when people see that 360-degree feedback and it's raw, people don't see the positives, they don't work out and analyse what's really being said there. And that was hugely impactful. There's one or two people that I can just bring to mind just now who I can see them operating hugely differently. And it's not so that people think, oh my goodness me, they're different people. They are still the same people, they're still their authentic selves, but they are utterly different as leaders, and they're having a fantastic impact on the people they work with. Just look at the action learning sets. I mean, it was amusing actually, action learning set. When we first started with the action learning sets, everybody saw it as, oh, action learning sets. So people were doing lots of things. And then when they started feeding back to the force executive, we said, and what have you learned? And they looked as if to say, well, that's an unfair question. And we pointed out to the L bit, action learning set. And I think that's taken a little bit longer than the 11 months for that to permeate. But you and I know that here we are, 11 months on, and we're now hearing the learning that's going on within those action learning sets. We're creating a learning organisation. We're creating an organisation that values quality, that values individuality and diversity, but in a way that has come from within.
As part of the programme, I've attended the creativity workshops, which was run by Pearlcatchers, and we explored lots of different methods of how you can make yourself be more creative in the workplace and encourage creativity in others. Personally, what I've managed to do from that is to use a lot of the methods in my working life, both when I'm managing meetings, delivering sessions and seminars to try and get information out of people in a more creative manner. I've used some of the methods around World Cafe, where you have people working in groups and you get lots of shared ideas coming forward. And after doing the workshop, I also realised that I'm actually a much more creative person than I originally thought I was, and it gave me the confidence to be creative and to do things differently. And it's also enabled me to bring the creativity out in my staff and colleagues as well, and given me good methods for doing that.
I found the Altogether Different programme to be exactly that. It is different to anything that we've ever tried in this organisation before around leadership. Historically, we've utilised things such as square wheels to help our staff understand about organisational change. And I delivered some of that training historically and found that some of our staff really struggle to get the concept of something like square wheels, where the Altogether Different programme is much more creative and innovative, and allows staff the real opportunity to get involved in it and feel enthusiastic because it's a different way of doing things.
Academy 10 is an online learning based package that's really easily accessible within the force. You regularly get emails sent to you that ask you questions about whether you want to learn and develop something. And sometimes these are things that you probably want to learn but you're too afraid to ask. There's things that I know have helped my colleagues about such things as basic spelling and grammar, all the way through to quite complex issues such as how to build your confidence and how to deal with difficult situations. For me, this has been really, really useful. I obviously, like everybody, have a really busy, hectic schedule, and the way it's organised is very quick snippets of 5 to 10 minutes of learning. So I'll often go in a lunchtime, log in, quickly learn something over the time of my lunch, and it's really enjoyable. It's really easy to use. There's quick tests at the end to make sure that your learning's is appropriate, and you can always retake the tests if you need to.
As part of the programme, I've been part of an action learning set which is looking at a broader issue across the force around communication, and we're looking at a smaller part which is around displaying information in public areas in the force. I've really enjoyed the action learning set. It's brought me together with people from diverse departments from across the force who I might have heard their name before, but I've never worked with them. So I'm now working with people from finance, from crime scene investigation, from neighbourhood policing, from corporate planning, bringing us all together to work on this one project. We're working really well on the project, but as well as that, we've created the network outside of the project, so we're now linking on other things, and it's bringing forward really good ideas around other issues that we deal with in our day-to-day world. What I've also done from learning the action learning set method, if you like, is used it for other pieces of work within my department. So when I've had to look at reviewing how a process works, I've actually brought people together from different parts of the department and different parts of the organisation to get different ideas and ways of approaching the problem solving side of it.
In respect of Pearlcatchers, further training has been provided for AFE representatives. They were given a similar input as to what other members of the organisation were given. They've had an introduction to change and resistance to change and how you can overcome those hurdles. But probably more impactfully has been the work around creativity. The AFE representatives attended a creativity workshop, and a lot of the tools and techniques that were provided within those workshops now form the basis of some of the workshops that we run on a regular basis.
In Durham, in October 2015, we received 3 outstanding gradings for efficiency. We were the only force to secure that from a Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, when we're not complacent. But I think it's worth just thinking through how we achieved that. And we achieved that by not looking through efficiency through the lens of money, but looking through the efficiency through the lens of people. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that one of the things that HMIC spotted, and I know because they told us, was it feels different here. And it feels different here because Pearlcatchers were part of that shaking the old, very sometimes straight-jacketed view of policing. So what we've done is, which is what Pearlcatchers said on the tin, they were going to explore difference with us and give us a completely different training experience. And I think that part of other things, of course, it's always a mixture, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that efficiency label of 3 outstandings, which is superb, is partly because we look through the lens of people, not money, and partly because we gave people a completely different diet to think about their own development in a completely different way. I think the fact that we brought in outsiders. So when I think about what made the difference for us, what was the most significant? I mean, it was all important, but the one thing for me was bringing in outsiders, people who we'd not been exposed to before, and people who brought their own quirky view of the world, really. And because all too often in policing, you think, well, why don't they like us? Why don't they get us? And it's because we don't know what they don't know, and you become complacent when you look at yourself. So I didn't want the training programme, the development programme, to be delivered by some of our very expert trainers, because it wouldn't have had that freshness, and it wouldn't have had the appeal of this is how we are seen. Because what we're trying to do at the same time was encourage people to see that the public judging us and their confidence in us was a key part of our overall strategy. So in one word, the one difference that Pearlcatchers offered us at the time of starting the programme was otherness. Now, when we spoke to them in the programme, they gave a resounding bounce back to the altogether different programme. So very well, you're doing this with us, but what about that lot? Meaning me and my colleagues. So that's when we sat down and we said, fair shout. That lot, me, my colleagues, we needed to experience something like this again. So that's where the Giant Leap was born. And it became much more bespoke. So it trailed the altogether different stuff, but of course it had a rich seam of raw material, because all of the altogether different programme was then raw material for us. So all that anonymous feedback, group feedback, then became the raw material for Giant Leap, which was a hugely powerful base for us. Because when you're getting an uncomfortable truth, if the person who's delivering it's saying, well, it's all very well for you to say, to dispute this, but this is actually what people said last week. So that was hugely powerful for us in terms of understanding the temperature of the organisation and what we needed to listen to. So as a result of that, we were then able to develop that. So we weren't simply using the feedback from the altogether different programme all the time. That was our launch. And then once we'd got that buy-in at senior leadership, we then were able to build a very powerful team. It wasn't an aimless, let's have a good time. This was really focused on what we wanted to achieve as Force. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that Giant Leap, building on that strong foundation of this is what your first line supervisors are saying about your style, pal, you need to listen to this rather than preach, physician heal thyself. So that was really important. So there was a real strength to it. And then to align that to, so where do we want to be as a team? And then really building that strong team ethic. Build together a very strong team that can speak honestly to each other, where we can have fun and games together, but also a serious purpose. And it feels different. So it feels like it's reduced the tension, it's increased the understanding, and I think people have more fun, and there's less bite at the top team, and there's enough bite in this world without adding to it. So I think it's bespoke nature of working with your own organisation is its strength. So this doesn't feel like somebody coming in, Pearlcatchers coming in and saying, right, you're going to fit our straitjacket. This feels much more like Pearlcatchers coming in and saying, we will mould ourselves to you. When you embark on a programme like this with Pearlcatchers or similar, you're always thinking, is there going to be a dependency culture here? Are we going to have to continue to put coal on the furnace? Are we going to continue to have to pay for stuff? And it might be rather nice for Pearlcatchers to have a regular check. That didn't strike me as being a sustainable model in the current climate. So what's been really helpful is Pearlcatchers strikes me, and I know this is a cliche, that Pearlcatchers strike me as being a company that give you a rod and teach you how to fish rather than giving you the fish. And there have been all sorts of examples of where individuals have taken responsibility for creating action learning sets that have continued to flourish. So that tells me that we've got that sustainability. It's fresh and it continues to challenge what we're doing. So I think it's the action learning sets and its sustainability that has really struck me. We've become, as a result of the programme and its flex, I think we have become a more open organisation. So, for example, the Magistrates Inspectorate of Constabulary, who we're getting good marks from them at the moment. They've got some of my homework they're marking as we speak. So we don't want to become show ponies that, primp up very nicely when people come along and judge us. We're working horses here. We lift things and we carry things. But we're also mindful that we're judged on our appearance, so we care for that as well. And we've come up with a phrase that when anybody comes to see us, we ask them to tell us what they think we ought to do differently, what we need. need to improve. So we've become a very open organisation that is happy to accept the opinion of the people who come and see us. And we always say that anybody who comes in to inspect us, it's free consultancy. I think that personal relationship with Pearlcatchers was integral to it, as it always is. I mean, if there isn't mutual trust, I was really fed up with the way that we actually procured this. It just seemed to go on for years. It probably didn't, but we have definitely made our procurement processes much slicker since then. I understand that now that people can procure Pearlcatchers on the framework, which of course cuts out all that pain that I went through. But what it did do, that process, it really did distill the best five. And then as a result of that best five, we chose Pearlcatchers. I'm very happy to do that. So did I know about Pearlcatchers before that procurement process? Never heard of them. I thought there were people who dived down in the coral reef and found an oyster on the bed of the Pacific Ocean. So having been acquainted with Pearlcatchers through the procurement process, what we then very quickly did was form a very trusting relationship with them. So it wasn't a relationship that was born of extensive procurement and contracts and, oh, well, I'm sorry, but that wasn't in, or I'm sorry, you'll find that, or you'll have to re-tender for that. There was never any of that in the relationship with Pearlcatchers. It was very, right, how do we make the most out of this? What do we want out of this arrangement? Which of course was an improved organisation, and the staff who were part of it, the people who were part of this programme, feeling that it was theirs. And we quickly reached that position from a very formal process. There's absolutely no doubt that we have got back far more than the money that we've invested. What is that? Well, we've tested it in a number of different ways, and if people were to come to the force, Gary Ridley, my Assistant Chief Officer, would be happy to talk to you about what he feels are the payback is. Our former leadership guru, Hannah Bell, who's now working on her own, would be happy to talk to you if you want to come and talk to me. So in terms of pounds and pence, I think it wouldn't be accurate to extract from our improvement, so what did Pearlcatchers offer? But I'm very happy to describe it as far more than what we actually put in. I think any organisation that's going through significant change, one of the first things to do, especially if they're cost cutting, is they cut training, they cut staff development. We did the opposite. So at the time of our greatest crisis, we invested more in our staff development. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I mean, just out of the last 9 things that HMIC has looked at, we've had 8 outstandings and 1 good. Well, you know, HMIC is not noted for his generosity. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to suggest to other people that they need to look at Pearlcatchers and sit down and talk to them. Don't just look at what it says on the tin. Our experience was when you actually stopped the car, lifted the bonnet and had a look inside, you learnt a lot more than what it looked like in a distance. So I would always encourage you to speak to people in Pearlcatchers and see what it can offer you. It's good for us. I mean, the implication, of course, Pearlcatchers, we find the pearl. I think they're probably the grit in the oyster rather than the pearl. So not only do they catch pearls, but they allow everybody in the organisation to have the grit in the oyster so that they can all manufacture a pearl. Yeah, but I think they are the grit in the oyster. They are the point of difference, where they're the mirror that you can encourage your people to look at, to see themselves accurately, to see themselves for what they are rather than what they believe or would want themselves to be. I think they're brave as well in terms of being able to say to the senior leaders of my organisation, I think you might find reality slightly different to how you've remembered it, and that was really useful. So I suppose creativity, the grit in the oyster, and the courage. But my message to people involved in the public sector, and in particular policing, is there has never been a better time to invest in development. And sometimes bringing in people from outside has more resonance for your people. Prophets in their own land are never heard. And so I think that would certainly be something that I think people need to reflect on, now more than ever.
From the very beginning, I've been really happy with working, particularly with Sharon, but overall with Pearlcatchers as a company. I had my project brief at the beginning, which was to have a fair, transparent and open process. And we've been able to deliver that completely as far as I'm concerned. And also the feedback we've got from our assessment teams, our candidates and our executive leadership team they've been particularly happy with what's been delivered from Pearlcatchers, and it is completely matched the brief that we had at the start. It's provided a product that the whole organisation are happy with. We are seeing an improvement not only in our candidates going through the process, but in the standard of supervision and leadership we've had from those individuals that have gone through the process and been promoted. We have seen a step up in their performance in the time that they've been promoted and gone through the next stage of their promotion process at step 4, particularly around their style of leadership, around the coaching style. We're already reaping benefits from that, in as much as it's not only improved our promotion process, but also in the supervision level that we're seeing from those candidates that have gone through the process. So overall, it's exceeded our expectations around what we've seen from the process. So we're more than happy with what we've had from Pearlcatchers. But the main thing for me was to ensure that it was very focused on what were the challenges for a sergeant or inspector in Wiltshire Police, rather than a generic for police officers per se. So we spoke with Sharon at Pearlcatchers, and she came down and worked with a number of focus groups and workshops of current sergeants and inspectors, and also our superintendents, for identifying what we would expect from our top supervisors. So those that stood out as particularly good from experience levels, and also from those that were obviously the talented individuals, and we engaged with them, brought those into focus groups at headquarters, and let them explain what they saw in their peers or in anybody else from a DMT level that they thought were the best behaviours, so that we made sure that we incorporated those behaviours into the assessment process, but also identified the particular challenges for supervisors working on a day-to-day basis within our policing model. Diversity and inclusion are key to everything we're doing within our promotion process. We want to identify the best leaders who have a good understanding of equality, diversity and inclusion. So we engaged also as part of this workshop process with our positive action team and our ED&I team to ensure that any concerns from that team's perspective were brought into it, but also engaged with our underrepresented groups to identify any concerns they may have regarding the process, to ensure that they were addressed, that they were briefed, but also incorporated into the assessment process. So we arranged through Sharon once again to do some awareness sessions so that there were no surprises within the assessment process, but also it was completed early enough so that all candidates were aware of the process, and any concerns they had were fed through our ED&I team and then addressed prior to any process running. Obviously, all the research that was carried out with the focus groups and the workshops was particularly focused on identifying what were the current priorities for the force and the challenges for supervisors. So when Sharon designed those actual scenarios for testing as part of the assessment centre, we actually looked at those and used a number of our supervisors who were part of our assessment team to actually give us feedback to make sure that they were relevant to the challenges they were facing. Unfortunately, because of the timescales we worked to start with, we weren't able to put them through a test process before we ran the process. But certainly the feedback we got from the assessors that were trained was that the scenarios were very realistic and focused on our priorities and challenges for the teams as they were at the time. It was key to us once again was around the fact that the professional actors had been briefed in what they had to do, what they could say, where they couldn't go with the roles that they were playing in there, and it made sure that every candidate was giving a fair scenario to deal with, and it was consistent throughout. They didn't come away from the brief, and particularly around the diversity issues, it meant that we were particularly looking to ensure that the candidates built a good rapport with the role actors as they were coming in to deal with the scenario. So once again, it kept it consistent, but it also made sure that any behaviours that the actors were using were the same for every candidate. So we got that consistent approach, but also it enabled us to get some information from the actors after each scenario around how they felt during that scenario. So it was a little bit around understanding both directions. It wasn't just the candidate's performance, but also the impact they had on that role actor in the way they dealt with them, particularly where one of the candidates may have come in and been quite confrontational, compared to another that came in, built rapport and took a more coaching approach to dealing with the role actor. It had a big impact on the performance of that candidate during the scenario, but also in how they were assessed overall. It was a huge change to see for us role actors coming in, professional actors dealing with those scenarios and providing that consistency, rather than using somebody who may have come in as a role player and may have not understood what they were doing to the same level. So I would always say for us to assessment processes in the future, it's really important that we use a professional actor as part of that process now. Well, this was particularly good for me because I was fully engaged throughout the process, and Pearlcatchers were sending through all the potential scenarios through to me to have a look at before moving on to the next stage each time. And anywhere where I had any concerns over something that might be challenging for us or may have not been quite right for us as a smaller force as part of this process, they were fed straight back to Pearlcatchers again, and any changes were made very quickly, fed back to me again, and we were able to progress everything on very quickly with those scenarios designed exactly as we wanted. That was particularly interesting to watch as the process went on, because a number of candidates that were coming to the process were very underconfident. They were unsure of the new process. They didn't really understand why it had to change from what they'd been doing before, and really thought that it was going to be challenging. But having gone through the workshops and the awareness sessions, you could see that quite a lot of the candidates were feeling a lot more confident in the processes they were going on, and this was seen during the actual assessment process as well, where those candidates were coming in and the majority of them were performing well and seemed well prepared and confident as they entered the scenarios. But also at the end, a lot came away from the assessment centres feeling as if they performed well, not just a case of, well, I might have done all right, or I might not have, and I don't know. It was a case of, yeah, I felt confident coming out of that, particularly for, once again, our underrepresented groups, and the female officers that are maybe not wanting to enter the process because they had particular concerns going into it before around whether they would be able to work flexibly on promotion, or that they felt they may have not being able to perform as well as they could. I particularly saw a real uplift in the confidence around female officers who'd been unsure about entering the process previously, were quite happy to enter the process and felt confident that they would perform well and would then be able to go into roles on promotion where they would be supported by the organisation as well. So confidence overall was a significant improvement, and also that you could see the candidates felt as if they were in control of their performance at the selection centres, and also they were the ones that were in control of whether they actually gained promotion or not, rather than it being just on the opinion of a person at a selection panel. I found Pearlcatchers to be particularly engaging and helpful throughout all the work we've done with them over the last few years, and with everything that we've been given as briefs for projects. The whole of the Pearlcatchers team have been really helpful with helping us develop those briefs to the point where we have a product to deliver. I have been more than happy with everything the team have delivered to us, and I would certainly look to involve Pearlcatchers in any future processes we have, particularly around the friendly and engaging style that both Sharon and the rest of the team have, and the helpful nature they've got, but also the content that they can provide for us. It's not a superficial level, it is a very deep level of learning that they can give to everybody, but they also make sure that the product's right for us, and it's not just a generic product. It is a bespoke product for us as an organisation that matches the brief that we've been given, which could be different on every occasion, and they've adapted everything they've got to fit with us as an organisation completely. I would really encourage anybody who's looking at anything to do with their learning offers, particularly around leadership, coaching, to speak with Pearlcatchers and to find out what they've got to offer, and then to engage with them to make sure that the product that you get is right for your organisation.